Alright, let's install the Mobius Action Cam into the Honda Insight mirror. So the first thing we have here is the actual mirror itself. I've removed it. You don't need to. We're going to remove the trim piece here. You don't need it again. I'm going to set it aside. Removing the mirror is just easy as unscrewing this screw on the back and it'll just kind of plunk down. Set it aside. Again, you don't need to remove it. So what we have, we need a flathead, a Phillips. I'm using a number 3 Phillips, number 30, so triple aught. We have three 3D printed parts here, a cover, the base, and this is the actual trim piece replacement that we'll be using. We also have a heatsink, and I'll put the specific part number here. And we'll need 2 screws, and then of course the action cam itself. The action cam uses micro SD, it shoots 1080p, and it is very high quality. I will show you some video. So the first thing we'll do is we're actually going to remove the card, and just kind of set it there. And we're going to take the camera apart. You're going to remove these 2 screws. This camera is $92. You do need the Type B lens. I don't think the Type A lens will fit with my design. So when you remove this cover, the battery is going to be attached to the top. I have disconnected the tape to make it easier, but you will need to be a little more finessey than I. With the battery attached, you'll be pulling this plug out with your hands, and you can just pull on it. Now, I don't recommend reusing the battery because in the heat it will actually expand, it could explode. So what we'll be doing is we'll actually replace it with a super cap, which I don't have yet, but it will fit in this case. Fun fact, the battery will not fit in this case because I want it to be thinner. So we're going to remove this. I've just pulled this fin up here. It's not as weak as people say it is. You can use a flathead or whatever. Set the digitizer aside. We have 3 screws to remove. 1, 2, 3 screws that we'll take out. These screws are very small and they're very easy to lose. And if you don't have a number or a triple aught driver, I recommend buying one or it will just be frustration. Take 1, 2, and then the third one here. It's kind of sticking. There it is. What we'll do is we'll pull this guy up and out. Now there's a heatsink here on the back with this gap pad right here. We're going to take the gap pad off. We will be reusing it. Kind of just put it aside. You don't want it to get dirty. Now the default heatsink in here sucks. This is electrically insulated. It has a plastic film on it, but it is aluminum on one side, but that electric insulation is bad. And then the heatsink itself is bad as well. It doesn't have any surface area at all. We won't be reusing it. We also don't need the buttons. So what we're going to do first is we're going to take our heatsink and drop it in here. You see the fins? Those are going to line up. It presses right to the top, and then we need to actually put the gap pad in as well. Now the gap pad should go about 2 millimeters from the right side so that it lines up when you flip it over with these 2 parts that get hot. Before we do that, we need to install the camera. It just snaps here into this trim piece. The wire side goes up, and you'll see it's flush. It just mounts very, very flush. And then we're going to actually mate this over like that, which is super simple. And then we're going to take our screws here. Part number is available in the description. This screw needs a very thin head. If the head's too thick, it'll hit the microphone, which isn't the end of the world, but it will flex your PCB if your head is too thick. So maybe a millimeter. Flat head, or Phillips head, but a flat head profile. The length is not that important. I've made the depth on these quite deep. I think it's 400 mils. Anyway, we're going to screw this together like so. You don't need to over tighten this because it's just plastic you're screwing into, and it's very lightweight. This secures the lens. It does have a little bit of wiggle, but it's not too bad. One thing I'll note is the lens, before we put it in, has a piece of tape that kind of sticks out here, and you can just peel that off. That tape is for RF emissions, which it's still sealed. We're not breaking any lines. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to install this guy. The USB port needs to go in first, like so, and then it just kind of falls down. Now you do need to bend the microphone just a little bit, and I recommend doing it before you install, or I forgot. And that way you clear the screw head. Now the screw head will not short the mic out, but I still recommend putting a piece of tape there. And even though I recommend it, I'm not going to do it for this video, but just put a little piece of electric tape there. And then you're going to just drop these screws down. Maybe I'm not lined up. There we go. So there's the screw, like that. Do not over tighten these screws. You're holding a very, very lightweight PCB. I'll note that the screws screw in a different place than you took them out. There was one in the corner, and then there's two here. This one you can't screw into because there's a heatsink there and there's nothing to screw into. Now, of course, you do need to force the heatsink onto the pad, but we do that differently. Now, it appears I've actually stripped that screw out in my haste and my many recording attempts of this video. So if you look at the cover here, the cover actually has this little bump, and this bump pushes that back so that the gap pad is compressed. You do need that gap pad compressed, or the heat will not transfer well. Alright, so we're going to slide this guy back in, like so. And then you'll install your battery or your super cap. If you install the battery, you don't need the gap pad. You don't need the foot on here, and you can actually just break it off with a pair of pliers or whatever. The super cap is much thinner and it just fits in there just fine. Again, I do not recommend using the battery. So once we have this guy installed here, you can kind of see the profile like now. We're going to put this on. Now there's a small rail on the top here. You see the rail here? That rail goes right here. Now on this design, I'm going to change the fillet. It's too aggressive and it made it kind of fragile. But on the design I'm posted, that's not there. I just don't want to reprint this. It takes a bit. So what you're going to do is you're going to slide it in like so. And then you're going to take your 0.0 driver and you're going to just kind of push against the wall like so until it falls into place. This is probably the trickiest part, but you can see that it's just not coming into place, and then you're going to just push it. It's going to snap together. There are no screws in the bottom. This hole is only for the driver. This is concentric with the hole down here, and you could screw it down, but I don't recommend it because this holds so well. With that, back in your car, we have your mirror. You're going to take your camera like that, and you're just going to push it. It's going to snap right on. So now you have your camera here. Now the only thing I didn't show is that there's actually a wire that you need. Come on off. Let's see. This is a little more difficult to take off because it's not as lightweight, but you just got to be really easy with it. Now when it's installed in the car, the correct way to remove it, here's back installed, is you'll cam against the piece there and you'll just very slightly pull here and pull one side off, and then very slightly pull there and you'll pull the other side off. Notice there is clearance here for the mirror. I'm 6'1" and I have tons of clearance, and I've kind of put it maybe a foot lower. Even all the way bottomed out, it will still clear here, even when you're pulling it the right direction. There is this nighttime mode that works for me, but I don't promise that it'll work for you if you're under about 5'5" or 5'4" maybe. Anywho, so we're going to remove this again, and I'll show you that wire. Whoops. So there's a hole right here, and the wire is going to be soldered to the USB port. This USB port is too close to the back of the mirror, and there's really nothing I could do about that and still make it look cool. So you'll just need two little solders. The pieces are super big, and that'll be good. But that's it. This is the camera. I sell a whole kit, includes everything. I sell a kit that includes everything but the camera. And then, of course, it is all open source, so you can just buy it yourself and assemble it. And then, of course, I'll try to support it on the Insight community. Sweet. Have a great day.